one thing I didn't like, the tracking wheel on here is flat. I don't know why so many of these places are doing these like not flat tracking wheels. Here's my 1200 grit. It just isn't arched enough, I think, for a good belt tracking system. So I added a little tape to it. And sometimes you have a belt that's a little wonky. That seems to be the case with this 1200. Not sure why this one's running so poorly. But I've had that problem with this belt before. You can see how much that belt is almost running on the edge. I don't understand why. I think this is just a bad, not a great belt. It's running okay, but man, it is literally almost up against it's almost up against that tracking up there. And it's not really tracking how it should be. And that's a little too, that seems too loose there. Like that's where it should be, but look at it flopping around. I don't understand why that belt should not be that loose. Let me grab a new 1200. Very odd that I would have a belt like that. I mean, I've never had a Trizac belt stretch. I don't even think it's something that can happen to them. But hey, I'll just grab a new one. Yeah. Fortunately, I have them. Let's just see if it's an oddball. That is an oddball. Which you never like to see on an expensive belt. You know, as you get bigger and bigger belts, they get more and more expensive. They last longer. They run cooler. But the other thing you run into is they cost more. Yeah, look at that. So that's a bad belt right there. So another thing to keep your eye out for, it does happen. You can get a wonky belt. That feels great. So this is the one I need to be careful with. So I make some more minor adjustments. All right, so that was all good. So let's grab one or two and test it. We'll do our honing. Cutting great, just like always. Maybe 5 millimeters there thick. I don't know exactly. Let's see how thick that thing is. It's pretty thick. 4.73. Not a bad guess at 5. Yeah, so we don't need, you know, almost 5 millimeters away from our belt. So I will, you know what? Hey, let's just show it. What the heck? I'll show you what I'm going to do here. Why not just add it into this, right? Alrighty, so I have my 50 grit Crubatron Monster on here. I'm just going to loosen the lower part here so I can just keep touching this to that until I grind down this part up here and get it so I can get it even closer and get rid of some of those extra millimeters on the tip of this angle guide that we just do not need. All right, so here we go. Don't overheat it too much. All right, now let's see if that helps with our angle situation we had before going on here. So now my 17-degree angle should be able to be much closer to the belt. Yes. And that's why you can grind, that's why grinding that tip down is helpful. So let's go back to, let's get this new 1200 back on here. And I keep saying 1200, but it's an A16 for those of you that are wondering. Yeah, that looks good. Now let's see. Yeah, much better. So now I can touch, even on this smaller, thinner knife, and still be on my platen. And that was accomplished just simply by grinding an angle on the front so that I can get that closer to the belt. And that will help. So there's your solution for fixing any fear of slipping in there. If you thin out that front, grind this to a kind of a triangle, and I could even go a little deeper with that if I wanted, and that will get you even closer to your belt. All right, so that reminds me of one other thing I wanted to touch on quickly. When you're having tracking issues, so let's say, and it doesn't matter what machine it is, if it's your Tulker, if it's this Grizzly, even Harbor Freight, it's not so much an issue on the Harbor Freight, I will say this, as it is on these style machines that are fully adjustable where you can move your platens in and out. One thing that can cause tracking problems can be over tensioning your belt. You don't want your belt too tight. If it's super tight, that can cause you problems with your tracking. And I have very much noticed that with the Tulkers. There's like a fine line. If you try and over tighten those belts sometimes, especially back on the days before I converted mine when it had the much more flatter wheel, it was a lot harder to get that tracking just right. So that's something you can always look to too, is if you seem to be having tracking problems, check your belt tension. Maybe lessen it a little bit, maybe tighten it a little, maybe it's too loose, it could be either direction, but there is a fine line there. And I think I've shown this before, but if you look on my Tulkers, and I'm gonna do it on this Grizzly too, once I find all the best adjustments for it, I actually will take a Sharpie and mark it on those parts. So I know like, hey, this is usually the best spot that, everything works well and it's tracking well. I will actually draw little black lines right across there with a Sharpie, and, just so that I know that's in line. And I even do it, like I'll show you on here, I even do it on other parts too. like on my toolker here, I'll show you. See these two little dashes I put there so that I could make sure this was, you know, upright and straight. And that was where I found when I would do it was when you get a day where like everything's adjusted great, everything's running really well. That's usually when I go through and do all the little markings. So once you have it really running exactly the way you want it, that's when I'll go in, mark everything off. And then that is also very helpful if you're changing things out. So say you go to the rubber wheel on something like that, that's just a good way to keep your adjustments and things consistent once you figure out everything that's going on with your particular machine. That's it for this one. I'm gonna close this down and get back to working because I have knives to sharpen and get through. It's been pretty busy. I think today's the 18th. We're getting very close to Christmas, and I'm getting all my last minute people that are trying to get stuff in, and I do always try and get it back to them before the holidays if I can. So that's where I'm at now. But just wanted to share that all with you. Hope you like it. I'm open to any other suggestions, comments, and things that you may see. Let me show you one other thing before I'll end this. I did mention before with this Grizzly, one thing I like is they do have replacement parts for everything, which is really great. If you had to get replacement parts for a toolker, it could be difficult. There's lots of sellers, not necessarily a lot of people that are offering replacement parts. Where Grizzly, you know, totally different company. I believe they're US based. On their machines, you can go into the schematic, and I ordered a whole nother one of these. So originally, and I still may do this, I just needed something quick to get this up and running. So here was the issue I ran into, and I'll just show you here. Originally, when I saw this, my whole idea was to get a second one of these and use this. So this slides into here, and it's got multi-directions that this thing could be set. And what I wanted to do was I was going to use this, cut one of these down to size so that it was fit within the belt, and use this as my angle guide. The problem I ran into that I hadn't count on was that they put a curve in this. So it runs real close up to the machine and then it curves outward, which is fine if you're using this to get it right up close to the machine and you're using this entire platform. The problem was it stops right at that curve, and I was way too far away. Now, it doesn't mean that this still wouldn't be an awesome option. It could be, but what I would do, for one, would be cut this off here, re-drill a new hole, and have this right where the flat is. You could really do a lot of things with the original plate, but just know, like, right out of the gate, you're not going to be able to do it because of this curve. It makes everything way too far away from the belt to use this. Is there things there that could make this work really well? Yes, there are. There are many positive things about this, and I do believe even cutting this off right here before the curve is still going to give us plenty to work with. We could probably still use this as a platform to build an angle guide, and I think it would work really nice because you can see it has a lot of adjustments there. Still might need to weld something to it. I don't know if we could use just this. My only concern would be I would have wanted to see this way down at the bottom, you know, or you could replicate something like this and just redo a whole new plate and put it down here. But the closer you could get where it is attached to the very bottom of this plate is going to give you a lot more ability to get this closer and up against the belt for sharpening. But that's it. And I did already, so I mentioned when I first showed this machine that I ordered a second one of these. It already came in, which was really interesting because it said that it wasn't available, but I could put it on like a pre-order thing, but it still came in. So I guess their availability of parts either just recently changed or wasn't correct and up to date, because they did send me the whole piece that I wanted. So I am gonna probably also start working on a way to use this as a platform for making an angle guide, because I do believe it would be a lot easier and better for others out there if the only thing they had to necessarily work with were the parts it already came with. You know, maybe just adding a piece of steel to this angle guide and making some changes to that. But I did like the fact that I was able to get a second one, so I can still keep this machine as original with all its original parts, and then I can take others and chop them up and modify them and do whatever I want to do to them. All right, that's it, guys. I will catch you later, and I'll keep you up to date on this machine and how it's going for me.